The Guardian's Secret. The snarling came first, deep and primal, a sound that didn't belong in the peaceful park. Then came the stillness, that electric moment when every person within earshot froze, their conversation suspended mid-syllable, as they turned toward the source of the threatening rumble. Before anyone could react, the German Shepherd had positioned himself like a living shield, muscles coiled and ready, eyes locked on the approaching threat with military precision. And in that heartbeat of suspended time, no one watching realized they were witnessing the resurrection of a warrior who had once patrolled battlefields half a world away. Emma Reynolds couldn't see the confrontation unfolding before her, but she felt it in every vibration of the leash gripped tightly in her hand. She felt it in the sudden shift of her dog's weight, in the way Atlas's body had transformed from relaxed companion to rigid sentinel in the space of a single breath. "What is it, boy?" she whispered, her voice almost lost beneath the tension crackling through the air. Atlas didn't respond. He couldn't. His training, the kind embedded deep in muscle memory, had taken over. His focus had narrowed to a single point: the threat approaching his handler. The world beyond Dima's darkness was suddenly filled with danger. And Atlas was the only thing standing between her and whatever was coming. The sanctuary and its guardians. Riverside Park had always been Emma Reynolds' sanctuary. 3 times a week, she sat on the same weathered bench where the oak trees cast dappled shadows across the pathway, and the river's gentle current provided a soothing soundtrack. Though she couldn't see the vibrant spring flowers or the meandering path that wound through the park's heart, Emma had mapped every inch of this place in her mind, guided by sounds, scents, and the steady presence of Atlas by her side. The German Shepherd had been with her for just over 4 years, ever since the car accident that had stolen her vision and nearly her will to live. The doctors had called her recovery remarkable, but Emma knew the truth: it wasn't determination or physical therapy that had pulled her from the darkness. It was Atlas. On this particular Tuesday morning, the park hummed with its usual spring energy, joggers pounding rhythmically along the path, children's distant laughter floating from the playground, and somewhere nearby, a street musician coaxing a melancholy tune from a violin. Emma tilted her face toward the warmth of the sun, allowing its gentle heat to wash over her skin, as Atlas lay dutifully at her feet. "Beautiful day, isn't it, boy?" she murmured, reaching down to run her fingers through his thick fur. Atlas responded with a soft huff, pressing his solid weight against her leg in silent acknowledgement. At 30-4, Emma had rebuilt her life around new routines and heightened senses. She taught piano lessons from her small apartment on Maple Street, her fingers now more sensitive to the keys than they had ever been before the accident. Her students rarely noticed her disability. They were too enchanted by the way music seemed to flow directly from her soul to her fingertips. Atlas had been essential to this recovery. More than a guide dog, he was her constant companion, her protector, and her anchor to the world. Each morning he led her through the neighborhood with unerring precision, navigating around obstacles and pausing at street corners with a patience that seemed almost human. "You know what, Atlas?" Emma said, scratching behind his ears in that spot that always made his leg twitch slightly. "I think we should treat ourselves to those muffins from the cafe on the way home. What do you say?" Atlas's ears perked up at the mention of the cafe, one of their favorite stops where the owner, Mrs. Lenowitz, always snuck him a home-made dog treat. His tail thumped against the wooden bench, and Emma laughed at his enthusiastic response. What Emma couldn't see was how Atlas's attention never fully relaxed, how his amber eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, alert for any irregularity or potential threat. It was a habit embedded deep in his nature, one that predated his time with Emma, though she had no way of knowing it. Across the park, where the northern path curved around a small decorative pond, Victor Reeves leaned against his motorcycle, a cigarette dangling from his lips as his gaze wandered lazily over the park's visitors. His leather jacket was adorned with patches from his motorcycle club, and the skull tattoo on his neck seemed to grin menacingly in the morning light. 3 of his friends lounged nearby, their laughter cutting through the peaceful atmosphere as they shared crude jokes and passed a flask between them. Victor flicked his cigarette to the ground, grinding it under his heavy boot before his eyes landed on Emma and Atlas. Something about the sight irritated him, perhaps the serenity of the blind woman, or the disciplined posture of her dog, a stark contrast to the chaos he thrived in. "Look at that," he sneered to his companions, nodding toward Emma. "Princess and her perfect pooch. Bet she treats that much better than most people treat their kids." His friend then he chuckled. "What's it matter to you?" Victor shrugged, his eyes narrowing. "Dogs should be dogs, not babysitters." "That one looks too proper." He spat the last word like it tasted foul. "Let it go, man," Denny advised, but Victor was already straightening up, a malicious glint in his eye. "Just want to see if it's as well minus-drained as it looks," he said, pushing away from his bike. "Maybe have a little fun." As Victor's heavy boots crunched along the gravel path toward Demi and Atlas, he was unaware that he was about to provoke something far more dangerous than a simple guide dog. He was about to awaken a warrior. Atlas sensed the approaching trouble before Emma did. His ears swiveled toward the sound of the heavy footsteps, and his posture shifted subtly, muscles tensing beneath his fur. Emma felt the change through the leash, a question forming on her lips, just as Victor stopped before them. "Well, hello there," Victor said, his voice dripping with mock sweetness. "That's some dog you've got. Does he do any tricks? Roll over? Play dead?" Emma straightened on the bench, her grip tightening on Atlas's leash. Though she couldn't see Victor, his voice carried the unmistakable edge of someone looking for trouble. The scent of stale cigarettes and leather hit her nostrils, and she instinctively pulled Atlas closer. "We're just enjoying the morning," she replied evenly, keeping her voice calm though her heart had begun to race. "Please leave us alone." Victor laughed, the sound harsh against the park's peaceful backdrop. "Oh, come on now. I just want to meet your furry friend here." He clapped his hands loudly in front of Atlas's face, trying to provoke a reaction. Atlas didn't flinch. Instead, a low, rumbling growl began deep in his chest, a sound Emma had never heard from him before. It wasn't the warning bark of a guide dog sensing danger. It was something else entirely, something primal and threatening. "Your dog's got an attitude problem," Victor said, taking another step closer. "Maybe he needs to learn some manners." As he reached toward Atlas, the German shepherd's growl deepened, his teeth now visible in a controlled snarl. Emma could feel the vibration of the sound through the leash, and alarm bells rang in her mind. "Stop it," she said firmly, rising to her feet. "Leave us alone right now." By now, several park minus-goers had noticed the confrontation. They slowed their walks, watching with concerned expressions, but none intervened. Victor, emboldened by their hesitation and enjoying the power he felt, decided to escalate. "Let's see how brave your dog really is," he taunted, raising his foot as if to kick Atlas. What happened next stunned everyone watching. Atlas moved with lightning precision, placing himself squarely between Emma and Victor. His stance changed completely, no longer the patient guide dog, but something altogether different. His growl transformed into a deep, commanding bark that echoed across the park, stopping conversations mid-sentence and turning every head. Victor stumbled back, caught off guard by the sudden transformation. What the hell? I wouldn't do that if I were you, came a new voice, measured and authoritative. A park ranger named Owen had approached, drawn by the commotion. That's a service animal you're harassing, sir. That's a federal offense. Victor's bravado faltered as he noticed the growing crowd of onlookers, several with phones raised, recording the encounter. But it was Atlas's unwavering stance that truly unnerved him. The dog's amber eyes locked onto him with an intensity that seemed almost human, evaluating, calculating. An older man stepped forward from the gathered crowd, his weathered face partially hidden beneath the brim of a faded military cap. That's not just any service dog, he said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. That's military training I'm seeing. That dog served before he became a guide. I'd recognize that stance anywhere. A murmur rippled through the onlookers. Emma's hand flew to her mouth, her mind racing to process this unexpected revelation. Atlas, her gentle, patient Atlas, had a past she knew nothing about? Victor, sensing the shift in public opinion and growing increasingly uncomfortable under Alice's unflinching gaze, backed away, his hands raised in mock surrender. Whatever. Dog's probably crazy anyway. I'm out of here. The park ranger stepped between him and Dima. I suggest you leave the park immediately, sir. And don't come back today. As Victor retreated toward his waiting friends, the crowd slowly dispersed, though many continued to glance back at Emma and Atlas with newfound interest. The older man in the military cap approached cautiously, respect evident in his careful movements. Ma'am, he said gently, I don't mean to intrude, but your dog. He's special. Those weren't the actions of a regular guide dog. That was combat training. Emma's fingers trembled slightly as she reached for Atlas, who had returned to her side, once again the calm companion she knew. But something had changed. A veil had been lifted, and questions swirled in her mind about the dog who had been her eyes, her protector, her closest friend for 4 years. Combat training, she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. How can you tell? 20-6 years in the Army, ma'am. Worked with K-9 units in Afghanistan and Iraq. That response, the positioning, the vocalization, the focus, that specialized training. Your dog was probably a military working dog before he became a service animal. Emma sank back onto the bench, overwhelmed by this revelation. Atlas pressed against her leg, as if sensing her confusion, and she ran her hand along his back, feeling the strong muscles beneath his fur with new awareness. I had no idea, she admitted. He came to me through a guide dog program after my accident. They never mentioned anything about a military background. The man nodded, understanding. Often don't. Many military dogs transition to civilian service roles after retirement. They're already disciplined, intelligent, and trained to handle stress. Makes them excellent candidates. He paused. If you're interested in learning more about his past, there should be records. Military K-9s have service numbers, just like soldiers. As the man shared his contact information and departed, Emma sat in stunned silence, her fingers absently stroking Atlas's fur. The dog she thought she knew completely had suddenly revealed a hidden depth, a past life of service far beyond guiding her across streets and around obstacles. Who were you before me, Atlas? And what else don't I know about you? Atlas responded by resting his head on her knee, his steady presence unchanged despite the revelation. But for Emma, everything had shifted. Her loyal companion had just become even more extraordinary, and she was determined to uncover the truth behind the guardian who had chosen to stand by her side. The revelation. That evening, Emma sat at her kitchen table, a cup of tea cooling and touched before her as Atlas lay at her feet. Her thoughts remained consumed by the day's revelation. The incident in the park had revealed a side of Atlas she'd never known existed or perhaps had never wanted to acknowledge. There had been signs, she realized now. The way he sometimes woke in the night, alert and ready. How he positioned himself between her and strangers on the street. His uncanny ability to sense her distress before she even recognized it herself. A military dog, she murmured, reaching down to stroke Atlas's head. You were a soldier. The thought filled her with both pride and sadness. Pride in knowing her companion had served with honor, and sadness imagining what he might have endured. What had Atlas seen in his former life? What dangers had he faced? And how had he made the transition from battlefield to becoming her guide? Emma's fingers traced the outline of the business card the veteran had given her. Thomas Wilkins read in the raised letters of her adaptive card reader. Former canine handler specialist. With a deep breath, she reached for her phone and dictated the number. After 3 rings, Thomas's gruff voice answered. Mr. Wilkins, Emma began. This is Emma Reynolds, the woman with the German Shepherd from the park today. I've been thinking about what you said, about Atlas possibly having a military background. Been thinking about your dog too, ma'am, Thomas replied. Not often you see that level of training in civilian life. I'm guessing you want to know more? Yes, Emma admitted. I feel like I've discovered a stranger living in my home, which sounds ridiculous because Atlas is. Well, he's just a dog. Even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. Atlas had never been just anything. Thomas chuckled lightly. Military working dogs are anything but just dogs, Ms. Reynolds. They're trained with the same intensity as any special forces operator. They can detect explosives, track enemies, take down armed assailants, and protect their handlers at all costs. The bond between a canine and their handler is one of the strongest you'll find in any military unit. Emma's throat tightened. How would I find out about his past? His former handler? Military working dogs have identification numbers, usually tattooed inside their ear. If you're comfortable checking, I could help trace his service record. After ending the call, Emma knelt beside Atlas on the living room floor. I need to look at your ear, boy, she murmured, gently running her fingers along the velvety inside of his left ear. Her sensitive fingertips detected nothing unusual, but when she moved to his right ear, she felt a series of tiny bumps, a tattoo she had never known was there. Using her phone's accessibility features, she photographed the inside of Atlas's ear and sent it to Thomas, her heart racing with anticipation. Within an hour, her phone rang again. Ms. Reynolds, I've got some information, Thomas said, his voice reflecting his excitement. Your Atlas was once known by the call sign Ranger. He served 3 tours in Afghanistan with the Army's 10th Mountain Division as an explosives detection and patrol dog. According to the records, he saved his unit from at least 4 IEDs and participated in numerous high-risk operations. Emma felt tears welling in her eyes as Thomas continued. Atlas was retired after sustaining injuries during his 3rd deployment. His handler at the time was Staff Sergeant Marcus Collins. After recovery, Atlas was retrained for civilian service work. "Is there?" Emma hesitated, hardly daring to ask. "Is there any way to contact his former handler?" "Sergeant Collins?" Thomas paused briefly. "Military protocol usually prevents sharing that information, but I have some contacts. Let me see what I can do." No promises, though. As the call ended, Emma sat in silence, one hand resting on Atlas's broad head. "Ranger," she whispered, testing the name on her tongue. It didn't fit the dog she knew, and yet it was part of who he was, a name that represented courage, sacrifice, and service. Atlas, or Ranger, looked up at her, his warm breath against her hand, seemingly unchanged by the revelations about his past. But Emma felt change. The dog she had leaned on for years carried his own invisible wounds and history, a life of bravery before he ever came to her. For the first time since the accident that took her sight, Emma felt a surge of determination unrelated to her own recovery. She needed to understand this new dimension of her faithful companion. If Sergeant Marcus Collins could be found, perhaps he held the key to truly knowing the extraordinary animal who had chosen to be her guardian. 3 days later, Emma's phone rang with an unknown number. Her heart raced as she answered, somehow knowing this call would change everything. "Hello, is this Emma Reynolds?" The man's voice was deep, with a slight southern drawl and an undercurrent of emotion barely held in check. "Yes, this is she." "Ma'am, my name is Marcus Collins. I understand you have my boy Ranger with you." The journey unfolds. Emma's fingers trembled as she gripped the phone. "Yes," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Though I've known him as Atlas for the past 4 years." There was a moment of silence on the line, heavy with unspoken emotion. "Atlas," Marcus repeated, as if testing the name. That's fitting. He always did carry the weight of the world on his shoulders." The simple observation, so earnest, so intimate in its understanding, brought tears to Emma's eyes. This stranger knew aspects of her closest companion that she had never glimpsed. "He's been my guide dog since my accident," Emma explained, her free hand instinctively reaching to touch Atlas's fur. "I had no idea about his military background until recently, when he reacted to a situation in a way that made it clear he wasn't always a guide dog." "What happened?" Marcus asked, concern evident in his voice. Emma described the confrontation with Victor, how Atlas had transformed from calm companion to protective warrior in an instant. As she spoke, she could hear Marcus's breathing change, a mixture of pride and something deeper, recognition, perhaps. "That's my Ranger," he said softly when she finished. "Always knew exactly when to switch modes. We called it his combat stance. 1 second he'd be lounging in the sun. The next he'd be on high alert, ready for anything." He paused. "In Afghanistan, that instinct saved my life more times than I can count." The conversation flowed easily after that, as if they were old friends united by their shared connection to the German Shepherd. Marcus told her about Ranger's training, his uncanny ability to detect improvised explosive devices, his courage under fire. With each story, Emma felt as if puzzle pieces were falling into place, revealing the complete picture of her beloved Atlas. There was this one mission, Marcus recalled, his voice taking on a distant quality. Night patrol along a mountain ridge. Intel said the area was clear, but Ranger wasn't having it. Kept pulling me back, refusing to move forward. Turns out an insurgent cell had set up an ambush just ahead. His instinct saved our entire unit that night. Emma smiled through her tears, picturing Atlas Ranger standing firm, protecting those in his care. Wasn't that exactly what he did for her every day, in a different context? Ms. Reynolds, Marcus said suddenly, his tone shifting. I hope this isn't too forward, but I've been stationed at Fort Carson for the past year. That's only about a day's drive from you. If it wouldn't be an imposition, I'd like to see him again. The request hung in the air, fraught with both hope and hesitation. Emma understood immediately the weight of what Marcus was asking, and what it might mean for Atlas to be reunited with the handler he had served alongside in combat. Of course, she said without hesitation. Atlas is an important part of my life, but he was yours first. You both deserve a chance to reconnect. They arranged for Marcus to visit the following weekend. As Emma hung up the phone, a strange mixture of emotions washed over her: excitement at the prospect of learning more about Atlas's past, but also a twinge of something like jealousy or fear. What if seeing his former handler reawakened Atlas's military instincts? What if he somehow remembered that life and preferred it to their quiet existence together? She pushed the thoughts aside, reminding herself that Atlas, regardless of his past as Ranger, had proven his loyalty to her countless times. Their bond wouldn't be broken by a reunion with someone from his previous life. The days leading up to Marcus's visit passed in a blur of anticipation. Emma found herself paying even closer attention to Atlas's behaviors, noticing small details that now made perfect sense in light of his military background: the way he always positioned himself with his back to a wall in public places, how he scanned a room upon entering, his alertness to sudden movements or sounds. On Saturday morning, Emma waited nervously on her front porch, Atlas sitting calmly at her feet. Though she couldn't see the street, her ears were attuned to every approaching vehicle. When a car finally pulled into her driveway, the sound of the engine cutting off sent her heart racing. "He's here, Atlas," she murmured, gripping the guide harness tightly. Footsteps approached, measured, deliberate, and then stopped a few yards away. "Ms. Reynolds?" Marcus's voice was exactly as it had sounded on the phone, deep and warm, though now colored with barely contained emotion. "Mr. Collins," Emma replied with a smile. "Please, call me Emma." "Then I'm Marcus," he said, but she could tell his attention had shifted entirely to the German shepherd sitting beside her. Atlas had gone completely still, his posture alert but not tense. Emma wished desperately that she could see his reaction, could witness the moment of recognition if there was one. "May I?" Marcus asked quietly. "Of course." She felt Atlas's harness shift as Marcus knelt a few feet away. There was a pause, and then, "Hey there, Ranger," Marcus said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "It's been a while, buddy. Do you remember me?" The world seemed to hold its breath in the seconds that followed. Emma felt Atlas's slight movement through the harness, a subtle shift of weight. And then the harness tugged forward as Atlas took a single step toward Marcus. What happened next would be etched in Emma's memory forever. Atlas, her steady, composed guide, let out a sound she had never heard before, something between a whine and a soft bark. The harness pulled from her grip as Atlas moved forward, and Marcus let out a sound caught between a laugh and a sob. "There he is," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "There's my boy." Emma heard the unmistakable sounds of joyful reunion, the rustle of fur being vigorously petted, the thump of Atlas's tail against the porch boards, the soft murmurs from Marcus as he greeted his former partner. "He remembers you," Emma said, smiling through tears she hadn't realized were falling. "We went through hell together," Marcus replied simply. That kind of bond doesn't just disappear. As they moved inside, Emma prepared coffee while Marcus continued to reconnect with Atlas, who seemed unable to stay more than a few inches from his former handler's side. Rather than jealousy, Emma felt a profound sense of gratitude witnessing this reunion. Atlas's capacity for loyalty and love was even greater than she had imagined. Over coffee, Marcus shared more stories of their deployments, filling in the blank spaces of Atlas's past. He described how Atlas had been wounded during their third Touré mission gone wrong, an ambush, Atlas placing himself between Marcus and an attacker. He took a bullet that was meant for me, Marcus said quietly. After that, the military decided he'd done enough, earned his retirement. I wanted to adopt him myself, but he trailed off. What happened? Emma prompted gently. Marcus sighed heavily. I wasn't in a good place after we got back. PTSD hit me hard. Could barely take care of myself, let alone Ranger. The military placed him in a rehabilitation program for retired canines, trained him for civilian service. He paused. It nearly killed me to let him go, but I knew he deserved better than what I could give him then. The pain in his voice was raw, even years later. Emma reached across the table instinctively, finding his hand and giving it a gentle squeeze. He found his way to me, she said softly. After my accident, I was lost in more ways than just losing my sight. Atlas gave me purpose again, a reason to keep going. Marcus turned his hand to return her squeeze. Sounds like you saved each other. The simple truth of his words hung in the air between them. Emma had always thought of Atlas as saving her, but perhaps their relationship was more balanced than she had realized. Perhaps she had given him something he needed to stability, peace, a new purpose after the chaos of war. As the day continued, Emma noticed a subtle shift in Atlas's behavior. While clearly overjoyed to see Marcus, the dog kept returning to check on her, pressing against her leg or placing his head in her lap, as if reassuring her of his continued devotion. When evening approached and Marcus prepared to leave, Emma stood on the porch with Atlas at her side, listening to the reluctance in Marcus's footsteps. You know, Marcus said hesitantly, I live about 4 hours away. If it wouldn't be an imposition, I'd like to visit again sometime. Maybe become a regular part of Rangers Atlas's life again, in some small way. Emma smiled, feeling Atlas lean against her leg. I think we both like that very much. He needs all the people who love him in his life. As Marcus's car pulled away, Emma knelt beside Atlas, cradling his face in her hands. You've had quite the journey, haven't you, boy? She whispered, pressing her forehead to his. From war zones to city streets, always protecting, always serving. Atlas responded with a gentle lick to her cheek, his presence solid and unchanging despite the revelations of the day. Emma realized that while she had learned about his past as Ranger, he remained her Atlas, the guide who would lead her from darkness into a life worth living again. But now, with the knowledge of his military service and the reintroduction of Marcus into their lives, she felt a new responsibility. Atlas had given everything to his country, and then everything to her. It was time she ensured he received everything he deserved in return. Finding balance. In the weeks following Marcus's visit, Emma found herself viewing Atlas through a new lens. Every habit, every behavior now carried additional meaning. The way he positioned himself between her and the door at night wasn't just the preference of a guide dog, it was the instinct of a protector who had once guarded his handler in combat zones. His attentiveness to her emotional states wasn't merely canine empathy, but the razor-sharp awareness of a dog trained to detect the subtlest changes in his human partner. Emma began researching programs designed for retired military working dogs. After speaking with the program coordinator, Emma arranged a visit. Marcus offered to drive them, eager to see Atlas engage with elements of his former training. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" Ma asked as they pulled into the facility's parking lot. "I don't want to confuse him or make him think he's going back to that life." Marcus's voice held a smile. "Atlas isn't confused about who he is or what his job is now. But dogs like him, they're special. Their training becomes part of them. Letting him use those skills occasionally isn't about going backward. It's about honoring all aspects of who he is." The facility sprawled across several acres of open fields and wooded areas. Emma could hear dogs barking in the distance as they were met by trainer Lisa Hoffman, whose footsteps were brisk and energetic. "So this is the famous Atlas," Lisa said, kneeling to greet the German Shepherd. "Former military canine turned guide dog. That's quite a career change." "He's been with me for 4 years," Emma explained. "But we only recently discovered his military background." "It's not uncommon," Lisa replied. "These dogs transition remarkably well between roles. They're selected for their intelligence and adaptability in the first place." She paused. "With your permission, I'd like to run him through some basic exercises, nothing stressful, just to see how much of his specialty training he retains." Emma hesitated, her hand tightening around Atlas's harness. "Will this confuse him? About his role with me?" Lisa's voice softened with understanding. "Not at all. Think of it like a person who changes careers, but occasionally practices their former professional skills. It doesn't mean they're abandoning their new identity. For many of these dogs, engaging with their training can be deeply satisfying." With Marcus describing the scene, Emma listened as Lisa guided Atlas through a series of exercises: scent detection, obstacle navigation, and response to various commands. Atlas approached each task with focused enthusiasm that Emma had rarely witnessed, moving with a precision that spoke 2 years of intensive training. "He's remarkable," Lisa said afterward, the admiration clear in her voice. "For years out of service, and he hasn't forgotten anything. Most of these dogs retain their training for life, but his responses are exceptionally sharp." On the doctor home, Atlas lay contentedly in the back seat, occasionally pressing his nose against Emma's shoulder from behind. She reached back to stroke his fur, her mind processing everything she had witnessed through Marcus's descriptions. "He loved it, didn't he?" she asked quietly. Marcus's voice held a smile. You could see it in every line of his body. That focus, that purpose, it's what dogs like Atlas are born for. "But he loves being my guide too," Emma said, a question hiding beneath the statement. "Without a doubt," Marcus assured her. "Atlas has 2 lives, 2 sets of skills, 2 purposes. Today wasn't about choosing one over the other. It was about honoring both." That evening, as Atlas settled at her feet in the living room, Emma reflected on Marcus's words. She had been viewing Atlas's past and present as separate lives, the military canine ranger and the guide dog Atlas, but that perspective was flawed. He wasn't 2 different dogs. He was one extraordinary animal whose experiences had shaped him into the perfect companion for her needs. "You contain multitudes, don't you, boy?" she murmured, rubbing his ears gently. Over the following months, Emma established a new routine. Twice a month they visited the training facility, where Atlas engaged with exercises that challenged his military training. Marcus joined them when his schedule allowed, his presence adding another layer of joy to these outings. Between these visits, Atlas continued his daily role as Emma's guide, seemingly more content than ever as both aspects of his nature received recognition. Emma also began learning more about Atlas's breed and the specific training military working dogs received. She incorporated small elements into their daily routine, more complex games that challenged his intelligence, set-minus-based activities that engaged his tracking abilities. Atlas thrived with these additions, his already attentive nature becoming even more focused. Marcus became a regular presence in their lives, visiting at least once a month and calling frequently to check on them both. Emma found herself looking forward to his visits not just for Atlas's sake, but for her own as well. Marcus understood parts of Atlas that she never could. Six months after their first reunion, Marcus arrived for his regular visit with news. "I've been reassigned," he said as they sat on Emma's porch, Atlas lying contentedly between them. "They're moving me to Fort Benning in Georgia. I report in 3 weeks." Emma felt a surprising pang of disappointment. "That's quite far." "Too far for regular visits," Marcus agreed, regret evident in his voice. He hesitated before continuing. "I've been thinking about making a change, though. My 20 years are up next month. I could retire, have my pick of civilian jobs." "What would you do?" Emma asked, her heart beating a little faster. "There's a veterans organization about 30 minutes from here looking for a canine program coordinator. Working with service members and dogs." His voice held a question and asked. Emma smiled, understanding the real conversation happening beneath the surface. Over these months of visits, something had grown between them, a connection forged through their shared love for Atlas, but evolving into something distinctly their own. "That sounds perfect for you," she said softly. "Atlas would certainly appreciate having you nearby." "Just Atlas?" Marcus asked, his voice low but clear in its intention. Emma felt warmth rush to her cheeks. "No," she admitted. "Not just Atlas." Atlas, sensing the shift in energy, moved to sit between them, his head swiveling from one to the other as if following the conversation. Marcus laughed, reaching out to ruffle the fur between his ears. "Always looking out for everyone, aren't you, boy?" he said fondly. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the porch, Emma reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this moment. A chance encounter in a park, a threat that revealed a hidden past, and now this a new beginning built upon the foundation of a remarkable dog's dual legacy. Atlas had begun as her guide through physical darkness, but he had become so much more, a bridge between her past isolation and a future filled with unexpected connections. The military working dog and the guide dog weren't separate identities after all. They were complementary aspects of the extraordinary animal, who had changed not just her life, but Marcus's as well. As Marcus prepared to leave, promising to call with updates on his retirement paperwork, Emma knelt beside Atlas, wrapping her arms around his sturdy frame. "Thank you," she whispered against his fur. "For everything you were, everything you are, and everything you've brought into my life." Atlas pressed against her, as steady and reliable as he had been from the first day. In the gathering twilight, Emma understood with perfect clarity that some journeys were circular, bringing us back, not to where we started, but to where we were always meant to be. The meaning beyond the story. The journey of Atlas, once ranger, carries profound lessons that extend far beyond the tale of a remarkable dog. His story illuminates universal truths about purpose, adaptation, and the multifaceted nature of service that apply to our human experience as well. In Atlas, we see the power of dual identities coexisting within one being. He was simultaneously a warrior and a guide, a protector and a companion. This duality reminds us that we need not abandon our past selves to embrace new chapters. Our previous experiences, even those that seem disconnected from our current path, shape us and provide skills we carry forward. The veteran who becomes a teacher, the athlete who becomes a coach, the survivor who becomes an advocate, all carry forward abilities from their past that enhance their present purpose. Atlas's transition from battlefield to city streets demonstrates extraordinary adaptability. When his circumstances changed, he didn't resist or break. He redirected his exceptional skills toward a new mission. This resilience speaks to our human capacity to reinvent ourselves in the face of change. Life rarely follows a single, unbroken trajectory. Those who thrive are those who, like Atlas, can transform their purpose without losing their essence. Perhaps most powerful is the lesson of service itself. Atlas served his country, then served Emma, with equal devotion. His purpose was never self-centered, but always directed outward toward protecting others, guiding them, improving their lives. In a world that often celebrates individual achievement and personal gain, Atlas embodies the profound fulfillment that comes from living for something greater than oneself. The relationship between Emma, Atlas, and Marcus illuminates how connection heals. Each had experienced profound loss: Emma's sight, Atlas's military career, Marcus's struggle with PTSD. Yet through their intertwined lives, each found restoration. Emma gained independence, Atlas found dual purpose, and Marcus reconnected with both his past and a hopeful future. Their story reminds us that healing rarely happens in isolation. It occurs within the context of relationship, when we allow ourselves to be known and to know others deeply. Atlas's military background remained hidden, yet continuously expressed itself through his actions, his vigilance, his protective instincts, his discipline. This speaks to the invisible histories we all carry. Behind every person we meet lies a rich tapestry of experiences that shaped them, most of which remain unseen but powerfully influence their present. Atlas reminds us to approach others with curiosity and openness, recognizing that each person's actions are informed by stories we may never fully know. For those who have served in uniform, Atlas's journey holds special resonance. His transition from military to civilian life mirrors the journey many veterans undertake, finding new ways to apply their specialized skills, building new connections while honoring past bonds, and discovering that service can take many forms beyond the battlefield. In Atlas, veterans might recognize their own path of redefining purpose while carrying forward the core values of their service. The connection between Emma and Atlas demonstrates perfect mutual support. Emma needed guidance through physical darkness. Atlas needed meaningful purpose after military service. Together, they formed a partnership where each met the other's deepest needs. This exemplifies the ideal of relationship, not dependency or obligation, but complementary strength where each person's gifts address the other's challenges. Finally, Atlas's story reminds us of the extraordinary capacity of animals to heal human wounds. In his intuitive understanding of Emma's needs, his unwavering loyalty, and his ability to bridge the gap between Marcus's past and present, Atlas demonstrates the unique gift animals bring to our lives. They offer unconditional acceptance, wordless understanding, and present minus moment awareness that can ground us when we feel adrift. The lessons of Atlas's journey extend into our everyday choices. How might we honor all aspects of our identity rather than fragmented them? How could our past experiences, even painful ones, equip us to serve others in unique ways? What would change if we approached relationships looking not for what we can receive, but for how we might contribute? And how might we, like Atlas, move forward into new chapters while carrying the best of our past with us? In the end, Atlas teaches us that a life well minus live is one that adapts to changing circumstances without losing its core purpose to protect what matters, to guide where needed, and to remain faithfully present through all of life's unpredictable turns. A final reflection. As the sun sets on this story of an extraordinary German shepherd who bridged the worlds from battlefield to city streets, from soldier to guide, we're reminded of the silent heroes who walk among us. Some have 4 legs and fur, carrying histories of courage we may never fully comprehend. Others stand on 2 legs, their invisible wounds and unspoken sacrifices known only to those who have walked similar paths. Atlas's journey from military canine to guide dog, from ranger to Atlas, teaches us that transformation doesn't erase our past, it builds upon it. The skills, the instincts, the courage that made him an exceptional military dog became the foundation for his new purpose, guiding Emma through her darkness. So too can our own past experiences, even the difficult ones, prepare us for unexpected callings yet to come. Emma discovered that the dog she thought she knew completely had depths she had never imagined. How often do we make the same discovery about the people in our lives? Behind every person lies a rich tapestry of experiences that shaped them, battles fought, victories won, losses endured, most of which remain unseen but profoundly influence who they are today. Perhaps the greatest lesson from Atlas's story is that purpose can evolve without being diminished. His military service didn't end when he became a guide dog. It transformed. The warrior became a guardian. The soldier became a companion. But the core of who he was, loyal, brave, disciplined, remained unchanged. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Atlas's remarkable life. We'd love to hear your own stories of the special dogs who have protected you, guided you, or simply stood faithfully by your side through life's challenges. Have you ever discovered unexpected depths in a companion you thought you knew completely? Or perhaps you've experienced your own transformation, finding new purpose while carrying forward the best parts of your past. Share your stories in the comments below. Your experiences may be exactly what another member of our community needs to hear today. And if you've enjoyed this tale of courage, loyalty, and finding new purpose, please subscribe to Furry Legends for more stories celebrating the extraordinary bond between humans and the animals who change our lives forever.